Hi everyone, my name is Natasha Westover and welcome to Accounted International. Today I'm joined by Andrew Kirby and we're talking about my favourite subject, Excel etiquette. Andrew and I have been laughing about this a lot because I always have a lot to say on Excel etiquette, but I will let Andrew kick it off before I go through my entire list of tips. What are your tips on Excel etiquette, Andrew?
Okay, so thanks, Tash. Having been on the end of some of your sort of annotations on spreadsheets, etc., I'm very well aware that this is a bugbear. So we'll crack on. First and foremost, when you join a new company, you will probably find, certainly in larger organisations, there will be standard sort of templates. There will be standard styles. Familiarize yourself with those. It might be that they use standard fonts, colors, spacing, highlighting, etc. So yeah, make sure you're familiar with it, and any new spreadsheets that you develop, use that style. You might have a header in a company logo in the corner. You may have may be a company thing to have your name on the bottom, name and a date and time stamped on the bottom footer of the spreadsheet. Just make sure that you're familiar with it and that you follow it. If the company doesn't have a stock style, it's your opportunity to develop one. Make sure that any spreadsheets you produce look professional. Don't just leave a random block of numbers in the middle of a blank page. Put your borders and outlines in there, highlight them, and bold your totals and so on. Make sure that there are things like check digits in there to ensure that the spreadsheet actually adds up. And yeah, stick with your style, and try and ensure that other people follow that style, and then you can be responsible for introducing a company standard sort of format. Secondly, I would suggest that unless it's just a single sheet spreadsheet, if you've got multiple tabs, etc., just have a summary page at the front, which gives almost a dashboard of all the things that you want to present from that spreadsheet. As a senior manager, when I'm presented with somebody else's spreadsheet and it's just presented to me in the middle of the workbook with a random selection of numbers in front of me, I then have to go hunting for what I need. So for me, I need you to give me a spreadsheet, preferably saved on that summary page, showing me exactly what I want to see, not the bowels of your workings and your logic and so on. I would much rather just have that summary page that says this is the projected turnover from this project, and this is the profit it delivers. That's pretty much what I need to know. I can then interrogate the workings if there's any concerns over how it's been pulled together. Next up, I would say one of the things I find is with when you're collaborating with people on something like a budget or a business plan, is to ensure that you have version control. All too often, you send a spreadsheet across to somebody, you've done all your work and you've got it to a point, and then they say, "Oh yes, I've made some changes," and then they send it back to you. But you can't necessarily track where those changes are. It takes a whole lot of time to get to the bottom of what they've changed and why they've changed it. So if you're going to be collaborating with people, try and save your spreadsheet as version 0.1 or whatever number series you want to use. And then when hand it over to that person, say, look, can you just save it as the next version and return it to me with notes on what you've changed? Because otherwise it's all too easy to waste time digging around trying to find out what they've changed, why they've changed it. So yeah, I think company style, summary page and version control are my three pet things that I want to see correct on every
Pet
spreadsheet.
peeves.
Yeah.
Honestly, Andrew, as you were talking, I thought I was getting a rash. I just, especially on version control, if I see another folder and in it there is budget 2019 final, then another file, budget 2019 final. I'm going to scream. So version control is a massive thing. And with version control, you have to think about what if you wanted to search for that file. So think about how the name and convention of files, and is it going to be easy to search for it? Is it the right title for that piece of work? So if you were to search budget or whatever, would you find it? So think about the searching of that as well. But if you were to search final, you can't have like final coming up in all your search. It would just drive you nuts. And the other thing you were talking about, some of the formatting, I mean, it's just totally unacceptable to have an Excel spreadsheet that uses 2 decimal places over here, but 5 decimal places over there. I mean, it needs to be consistent, and it's consistent to the eye. So when you look at that document, you have to be consistent with the decimal places you use. And like, if it's 2 decimal places, use that throughout, unless it's maybe a total, and then maybe you don't need the decimal places. But think about how it feels on the eye. And maybe to do that, you do all the work, then you close the file, and you come back to it, and you're fresh, and you're looking at it going, how would someone fresh to that look at it? And on that note, I would say you have to bear in mind that maybe other people are going to use that file when you're not there, or they're going to use it out of hours. So think, if they're just picking it up and they can't quickly ask you a question about it, is it laid out nicely? Is it clean? Are there loads of workings on the side that detract from the story you're trying to tell? Can you hide or delete the workings? Go through it and think, if I was my boss at home who's going to use this file, and they use it at 10 o'clock at night, and they open this file, what would distract from what I'm actually trying to tell them? And on that note, make sure you do that final double check. And I think you mentioned it, Andrew, about just checking your totals. So for instance, if you've got a reconciliation for like prepayments, and it's for February 2019 prepayments, make sure you go in your finance system and see what the prepayment number is on your balance sheet there. Do that, just double check at the end to make sure there hasn't been some kind of error in your spreadsheet. I know you've got something to say on this, Andrew.
Exactly that. Is just literally put at the bottom of the spreadsheet, total per accounting system is X, and then your spreadsheet should say exactly the same, and then you have a little check digit underneath that says X minus Y is 0. It just reassures yourself in the first instance, but also the user, that this guy's put the information in there correctly, and all the formulae come out, and it sums. It's a simple thing. Make sure it sums. And the other thing that you were talking about, decimal places and so on. Yeah, it comes back to the point on format, is using if you've got currency, make sure it's displaying as currency, and the right currency, and decimal places, same number of decimal places, and you may have a format in the spreadsheet where your negatives are shown as in red rather than in black. Just make sure that that's consistently applied across the spreadsheet, not just to column C.
Yeah, definitely. And you'll find your way on it. And once you've found what works, and what your team, what works for them, like your boss, your teammates, whatever, then this format kind of works. So apply that to every spreadsheet you work on, because then they'll know what to expect from you, and that what you're giving out is good enough for the rest of the team to understand, and you've had no more feedback on decimal places are wrong here, well, I know that that number is thousands and you haven't put thousands at the top, so I didn't know, you know, so someone else who doesn't know it's thousands wouldn't know that. You have to think about your users. And I think that's probably my biggest bugbear, is that candidates and especially inexperienced people coming into finance, they don't think about the end user.
Absolutely. I would suggest, yeah, and if people have, you know, are working on the same spreadsheet as you, or are presenting you with spreadsheets, you know, if they're not following that style and they're not doing those, making those checks, pick them up on it. You know, ultimately, your goal is to ensure that they, you know, they work to the same professional standards as you do. So I think, you know, don't be afraid to say, look, do you mind when you're formatting, making sure that it shows in pounds, make sure that it's rounded to thousands, make sure that you know, there is a check digit. Just, you know, help them to help you.
Yeah, and I loved what you said earlier about, if you can, save it on that, save the file on that summary page or the front page. It honestly makes such a difference when you're, you know, as a manager, I'm churning through a lot of work, and it just looks way more professional when I open your file and it lands on that cover page, and I'm like, right, we're starting at the front, not where are we starting? We're in the middle, and I'm confused. And I would say my final thing, and then I'll shut up for today, although I've probably got a lot more to say about this, is if it's something that you think would be printed, and fair enough, massive, great, big reconciliations, we probably won't print them, we don't need them. But if it's something that looks like it could go into a report, or your boss might want to take it into the board meeting or whatever, set it up to print. So do your print area, make sure you've got your titles. You mentioned earlier footers. Does the footer say private and confidential? If it is private and confidential, does it make sense to have page numbers on the printout? Some of the larger documents that might go onto several pages when you print them out, can you set it up so that headers or column and row headers are repeated? Does that make more sense? So think about how you need to print it, because that can often be quite time consuming. So don't just leave it for everyone else to sort out. It's your piece of work. It represents you. So set it up to print. Go on, Andrew. I know you've got something to say.
The other one on that is try to remember that when it is printed, it has to be legible. It's no good having 70 lines on the spreadsheet and everything being you know, six font rather than 12 font. You know, people need to be able to use the printed version as well as the online version. So please just cut your pages in half, and, you know, insert page break, you know, insert new titles. Make sure that you know, when it does get printed out, it's legible.
Yeah, and that can often be quite time consuming. So you need to do that. Don't expect everyone around you to do it. And when someone sends me something or says I finished that file and I go and have a look and it's set up to print, oh my goodness, I love them forever. They're like my new best friend. Should we leave it there, Andrew? Because I feel like I've left it on a high, as opposed to like having my rash of all the little things that I have to deal with. Do you have anything else to say? Yeah.
Sounds like a plan, yeah.
Okay, guys, I hope...
like you, I could go on forever on this.
Yeah, because I think as managers, we see so many little things and we're like, oh, if they only did this or did that, it would have really helped me out. And it really detracts sometimes from a really excellent piece of work. We're talking about all the little niggly things, but it really makes a difference to someone who's consuming your work. So make it a true representation of yourself. So I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I hope you found it useful, and we'll see you in the next video.
Yeah,
I quite enjoyed it. I enjoyed that one. Honestly,
yeah,
as you were talking, I was like, oh, it just drives me nuts.
The problem I have as well is when people work out the answer either using a calculator or on the spreadsheet, and then they hard key the answer in. No, I want to know how you got there.
Okay, I'm putting that in as a bonus to what we talked about afterwards, because that is actually really, really important.
You know what I mean? It's non-Excel users. So non-Excel users will work something out and then put it into the spreadsheet, and
Yeah.
then work out X times Y and put the answer in, rather than let the spreadsheet do the work.
I tell you, when people do that, it's such a time waster for me, because if
You have to check it.
they're, well, yeah, you have to check it, but also if it's incorrect, I spend my time going, how did you get to that number? It's almost like, do you know when you were doing your exams and you were younger, and they're like, don't just put the answer, put your workings, because you might get points for the workings. If your answer's wrong, you get no points. But if some of your working is correct, you might pick up a few points. Is exactly that. But if your answer is wrong, then I'm looking at the spreadsheet going, how did we get that? It's such a time waster.
Yeah.
Oh my God, let's not talk about it anymore.
No,
I'm getting
it's
upset.
starting to get agitated.